What's the second best space horror film of all time?
Yeah, take a second to think about that.
Think about it. We know what your number one is.
Yeah, we know. So take the Alien franchise out. What's the second best space horror film ever made?
And why do you think it's Jason X? Hey there, boys and ghouls. Welcome to this week's episode of Hollow Weekly. Nick Rollins here with
George Healy.
And today we are going to talk about Life. So we went and saw Life.
Wait a minute. So here we are recording our, 30th episode? I think we've got quite a few under our belt now.
Mm-hmm.
And we're ready to go, ready to record, feeling good. We just came back from an amazing brunch. Go ahead, Nick.
No. Basically, if you see the movie Life, if you get which just my quick little spiel about it. Go see it.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. But Calvin, the name of the alien, is what I was served at brunch.
And you survived, so you're doing better than
this morning. Yeah, no, like, I don't know. Like, I feel like every space horror,
it was perfect. The breakfast was perfect.
Like I feel like the killer clowns from outer space had Jason X slice up my meal and then served me Calvin on the plate.
So if this episode comes out weird, it's because the food's fermenting in Nick as we speak. And
yeah. I couldn't tell if I had a sliced apple or cow tongue on my plate.
I couldn't either, and I eat apples.
Yeah, that's a big concern of mine. So if the episode's weird, just forgive us and see Life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So we went to see Life.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to give like a synopsis of what the movie's about?
Yeah, because the trailer doesn't do. First of all, the trailer and marketing for this film did not do the film any fucking justice. I mean, the posters kind of did. The posters were pretty cool, but the trailer just fucking sucked for this film. Like, I don't know what went wrong on that side of the equation.
Yeah, but to be fair, so we talked about this because I think the marketing team, that's a hard marketing problem to solve. You've got a sci-fi horror movie. It's not, as we're going to find out, it's not that popular a genre apparently.
Yeah.
In terms of quality people working in it, and then it has a super boring name, right? So
yeah, I think. But what else would you name that movie? Like,
no, the name's perfect, especially the way it turns out. Like the name's perfect. It's just from the marketing standpoint. I think that would have been a hard one to make a trailer for. I think.
Yeah.
The trailer sucked, but
I like the part where they read the Goodnight Moon part of the trailer. Like that part of the trailer was great.
It was way better in the trailer than the movie.
Yeah, in the movie it's kind of out of place.
In the movie, Jake Gyllenhaal just reads you Goodnight Moon straight up. Like you're just looking at him and he's just reading it to you.
Yeah.
In the trailer, they're cutting to some really cool shit.
And it has like a bigger impact on it. But you know what I was just thinking about before we started recording was like I can see, it's pretty obvious why there's not a lot of space horror because it costs a lot more to like make people look like they're floating through through shit and totally. Set pieces and other shit. But what I really liked about it was I bought it. Like I believed that there wasn't a point in the movie where it felt hokey space. Because anytime you do a space film, people always ask like, "Hey, Neil Tyson, is this dude like justice to space?" Because they did that with Gravity. You know what I mean? They were like, "How realistic is it?" I was like, "You're in a spaceship. You're in space. You're floating. You hit a bunch of buttons, and you say, 'Close the airlock,' and the airlock closes, and you're like, 'Close the airlock, guys. Come on.'" And I believed it. So like the setting of the movie, like I totally bought, and like I didn't feel out of place at all. So I think as a space horror film, it nailed space perfectly, which can't be fucking easy. It's not like shooting in a cornfield in Texas where you're like, there's corn, or in Texas we got chainsaws. Beautiful. Space you have to put some fucking effort into. Yes. And they did it really well.
We think we did it well, but we could be wrong. Neil Tyson, call us.
Please. We love Star Talk.
We do. Let us know. Well, I mean, all cards on the table. I think we both really liked it. I loved this movie.
Yeah.
That was great. I thought it was way better than I expected, and what people.
And it's not getting talked about a lot.
No.
Like, people keep saying Split, which is fucking great. Get Out, again, really great.
Totally.
But no one's talking about Life the way they were these two, and I felt like it was on par. I mean, I felt like Get Out probably had a little bit better. The characters were better.
Yeah,
because I didn't feel like I didn't get as attached to the space crew as I did in Split or Get Out.
Totally.
But they were still really, like, you had Ryan Reynolds, Jake Gyllenhaal, and the other actors whose names we looked at. We're like, we're not going to watch that.
Well, Rebecca Ferguson, who's really good.
But they were all really fucking good too.
Yeah.
But still, it like solid fucking movie. Like,
well, better than solid. So here's the thing. Like, so the setup for this movie is everyone's like it's, stealing the beats from Alien, and it's inspired by Alien, and all that's true. But you have
a space horror that's not
right, exactly. But you have a set of you have a crew on a spaceship. Their mission is to get samples from Mars. Mm-hmm. The way the movie opens, and I wanted you to talk about this because you're going to know more about it than me. But I was super impressed with the opening, the editing, and the way the camera was moving. Right. Yeah,
that was the first shot was like the sun coming up over Earth, right? Like, it was that really cool. The shots in the beginning are fucking
right, because the camera's tracking all the way through the ship. The people are floating from place to place, and there's moments where they're trying to handle a crisis, but you're actually seeing them upside down from your point of view, because everything's spinning in it. It seemed like a fluid, almost like Touch of Evil, unbroken shot. It might not be. Right?
It felt like not Get Out, the blind guy.
Don't Breathe.
Don't Breathe. It reminded me of Don't Breathe when it goes through the house. Same shit. Went through the spaceship. Sort of gave you a lay of the land. I don't think it did it as good as Don't Breathe, mainly because it's a spaceship and like in the house on Don't Breathe.
See, it's weird. I felt like it was better, but
really, because in Don't Breathe, I felt like they took me through the house. I'm like, okay, I know where to go. If I was in this house, I would know where to go. I would know how to get out. But in the spaceship, for me, which I guess actually worked for the film, there is no getting out because you're in a spaceship. So I guess now that the
thing that I liked about it was, as much as I liked the setup of Don't Breathe, it's what you're saying is true. That shot was basically a skillful horror version of selling you some real estate. Like, I'm a realtor. Here's this room. Here's that room. Like, you knew where you were.
Yeah.
This one was, so the setup of this part is that they're trying the whatever it is that's coming back from Mars that has the samples in it.
Yeah.
Got off track.
Like
it's
a pod or something like that.
Exactly. And but it's not going according to plan, right? Mm-hmm. So someone has to go outside of the space station and arrange to manually catch it, which has all kinds of risks for him and the ship, right? And they did a really good job of giving you like this anxiety, like, are they going to pull it off? And when the capsule hits the space station, like Ryan Reynolds, who's the guy who went outside to arrange all this, he vanishes. Like, you don't know if he's dead or alive or he has to be rescued or like whatever. And
it's like a loud crash.
But while you're trying to figure out whether they're pulling this off, you're nervous for them, like you want them to succeed. Like, the camera keeps putting you in this position where you can't figure out what the hell's happening because you're sideways or upside down or whatever.
Yeah, well, the way
it's routine for them.
The way you're seeing it is the camera's wherever like the controls are where they're sitting, and then there's a window that you're looking out of where you see Ryan Reynolds. So you're looking through a window, seeing their shit, almost from like how they would be seeing it. So you're just as confused as they are.
Exactly.
Which is another thing I wanted to bring up. Because we talked about that when we first saw the trailers. You had said something like, how many times is there a horror movie or a movie in general where someone gets locked into a room with something bad and they're like, let me out, and they always do these scenes and you're always like, what the they never do it believably. But I felt like in Life they nailed it.
Yep.
Because in the they show it in the trailer, like there's the scientist guy. It's the Calvin's holding onto his hand. They're like, let him out. And in the trailer, it's like 2 seconds.
Sure.
It's just, open the door. I can't open the door. Open the door. I can't open the door.
Right.
Cut. But in the movie, which that's the other thing, Life was rated R.
Yes.
Which is something that like Good Bad Flicks always says. Like, make it rated R. And it fucking worked.
And they did it.
Because this is so weird. I'm so used to PG-13 horror now because fucking producers and studios. But like when they had the argument of let this guy out, like they were like, open the fucking door. What the fuck are we supposed to do? And then like the argument they had with each other was fucking great because like everything they said made sense. Like they were discussing the chain of command.
Totally.
Because like it was a Chinese space station, Russian space station, United States. And they're like, there's no jurisdiction up here.
They're arguing protocol, like right while it's in real time.
Yeah, they were arguing protocol and like just like how to not be a shitty human being. But like they did it and it was like clear. Like it wasn't just them yelling and you couldn't understand.
Right.
Like you understood what the fuck they were arguing. And because the one.
Well, and you also, I didn't feel like when I was watching it that I was on either side. I was spectating, being like, I wonder what they'll decide as a group. But I wasn't like, open the door or keep the door closed. You know what I mean? Like, because it didn't seem clear what you should do.
Exactly. But the thing I wanted to bring up was that the film did so great is like the panicky moments. Like you mentioned just him grabbing that thing. You were unsure of what was going to happen. They did that a lot of times throughout the movie. Like that, the first time was grabbing the thing. The second time was when the guy had the scientist's arm. Like they did a lot of panicky moments and fucking executed it
Totally.
perfectly to where like you were unsure. And it kept you on the edge of your seat, which I hate when people say like, this movie kept me on the edge, but like it did.
No, it totally, I was nervous.
And it did it great. Like it was really like those situations were written like fucking beautifully. And directed beautifully.
There's an interesting thing I had read about, you know, how directors sometimes call back to things that influence them, right? So there's a really fascinating example of it where in the movie Sunset Boulevard, it opens with a dead body floating in a pool.
Yeah.
And the dead body's actually talking to you, right? So this is all backwards in time. And in Robert Altman's movie The Player, you have a guy who in the movie, he's floating face down in a puddle. And the guy who was making the comparison between these two movies was like, what Altman was saying was that Hollywood's gotten a lot smaller. You don't get a big fancy pool anymore. Now you float down a fucking puddle in an alley, right? So think about life in horror. Okay, think about the literally the first thing I think of is It's Alive, Frankenstein, right?
Yeah.
And Frankenstein is brought to life by lightning. Right? So in this movie,
Oh my god,
you've got the scientist who's got the sample in front of him, and he's got this tiny little electrical prod, like the size of a pencil, and he's like, "Let's wake him up," like whatever. And I was looking at it, I was like, "Holy shit!" Like this example's gotten so small. It used to be a lab and a like
in a castle,
like Jacob's ladders and the castle and like whatever, and now it's like some dude with a pencil-sized...
More high-tech, though.
More high-tech, right, totally. But just the fact that they provoked a similar level of tragedy and destruction as in Frankenstein, but with this tiny little, shrunken down lab with a shrunken down version of it, really kind of blew my mind. I was like, I wonder if that's on purpose.
Well, it's great that you bring that up because I wanted to talk about that. There was a lot of fucking horror references that I feel like they had to have been intentional. Like
absolutely.
You mentioned Frankenstein, which I totally glossed over until you mentioned it. But then they have a blatant call out to Reanimator. Ryan Reynolds says like some Reanimator shit.
Yep.
And then I think we're gonna. Do you want to head into spoilers?
Yeah. So absolutely.
So just to top off the review for life.
Yes.
Or just to let people know, like, really good, really tight horror film. I think this will be the film
more
next year.
horror than you think it is if you haven't seen it and you're only paying attention to the marketing.
This is the film you're going to see in articles that say, was Life the most underrated horror film of 2017? And yeah, it's fucking is right now. Like, people need to go see it more. Yes. So, spoilers. Which this isn't a spoiler. I'm going to talk about the rat.
It's okay.
First. So continuing with the horror references, you don't know what Kelvin is at first. It's just looks like a.
So Kelvin is the creature that was in the dirt sample that came back from Mars,
and it just looks like something you see. I mean, the guy was looking at him through like a microscope. He was like fucking really small.
And he's named Calvin because the people on Earth watching the space mission happen they have a contest, right?
Yeah, it has
among
some-
like 20,000 schools.
Yeah.
And they choose Calvin Coolidge Elementary School somewhere, and they get the honor. The kids get the honor of naming the creature.
Yeah.
So they name it Calvin after their school.
Yeah.
Which is probably also a reference to John Calvin, the philosopher, but we'll get into that. But
anyways, so you don't know what like Calvin's thing is. Like, Alien, he'll shoot little thing out, acid blood, Predator, do his mouth open, whatever. So you don't know what Calvin's thing is. And the first fucking thing he does is he fucking pulls a blob, because he goes to and he kills the lab rat, which they set up. Like, as soon as you see the rat, you're like, that's gonna be the first guy to go.
that was pretty predictable.
But I didn't know how he was going to do it, because in the trailer, like, he even like slowly like kind of like wraps himself around the neck, and I thought he was going to suffocate. Fucking melted the rat. The rat just melted into his skin, and I was like, that is like, it's like Space Blob. Like, we're seeing the blob in space.
Yes.
For now,
Yes.
because it turns into it. Like, this creature is like it's like they took like a dish, and they were like, put a little bit of blob. Put a little bit of Predator, Alien, of course. We're gonna put that in there. Frankenstein, you got some lightning. Let's put some shit in there. Which I didn't know that until you said it. But I thought it wasn't just me. Like, that was the total blob melting
for
thing.
sure, absolutely.
Like,
but one of the things I thought was really interesting, that the plot, I was afraid they were going to overplay it, and I think they did it just right. Was the Rebecca Ferguson? I hope she plays the person, the scientist who's in charge of what they call firewalls.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea was she was the person in charge of defense. If something goes wrong and there's an alien or a disease, I presume that's what they thought was going to be first. But that had a chance of getting out. She was in charge of being like, okay, we seal it in the room, or we seal it here, or this is what we do in response to if the power fails or whatever. And she had all these plans for keeping Calvin from, but the only plan that would have worked was not feeding Calvin.
yeah,
Because the point of Calvin is he gets bigger when he eats.
yeah,
So he eats the rat, gets a little bit bigger.
yeah, big enough to start taking on.
Then he sort of feeds on the guy who was electrocuting him, right? Then he straight up eats Ryan Reynolds.
That part, that was fucking gross.
That was, go ahead, talk.
Well, that was the first time in horror. Like, I've watched a lot of horror, which is why we run a fucking horror themed podcast.
For sure.
That was the first time a horror movie death made me gag. Like,
it was rough.
like, people always say, like, slasher films, like, during the 80s, they always have those things where they're like, slasher films are they, fucking up like kids and all that shit. And let me tell you something. Like, you can show visuals of people getting their heads cut off, losing limbs, but like, the thing that's gonna fuck you up is the sound design. That fucking noise he was making, like, you could hear him, like, it sounded like he was choking on like Jello. Like, it was just the grossest fucking noise, and like, that's what made me. It wasn't. I could watch, like, in the trailer, like, it shows Calvin going in Ryan Reynolds' mouth, and that didn't even do it. It was the fucking sound, and I was like even thinking.
And they
about
do
it now.
that thing where I hate this thing where when someone's dying in that way in a horror movie, their eyes get all bloodshot, and it creeps me out. I just don't like that sight.
Yeah.
And combining that sight with that sound was like
that death was gross. But the other thing is, to reel it around, horror reference, which happened just however the cards fell with Ryan Reynolds scheduling, which is what you looked up. It sort of forced them to pull a Psycho.
Totally.
Because when you see Ryan Reynolds in the film, you're like, Ryan Reynolds is going to be the lead. Even
He's
with
the final girl.
Yeah, you thought, and that's what I thought. Ryan Reynolds is the final girl. I like, but he fucking got it. And I was like, they pulled a Psycho.
He got it first.
Yeah, he got it first, which was great. Turns out it was a scheduling conflict.
Yeah, Ryan Reynolds was supposed to be the lead character in the movie, but he had scheduling conflicts, so they made him a supporting character, and he probably had to go film. So they're like, oh well.
Yeah, and I think that actually made the film. I don't know. It just gave it like.
No, I loved it.
It made it better for me, because like, when I saw the trailer, I knew Ryan Reynolds was going to be the last fucking guy there, and then when they killed him, I was like, oh, okay.
No, I love when a movie brushes you back. Like, it throws a wild pitch where you can't just stand up at the plate now. You got to be like, oh, this picture's crazy.
Yeah, and that's a good fucking feeling, especially like when you feel like nothing's safe in a space station.
Totally.
I was like, yes.
But I think it was a cool, like, if you're doing a sci-fi horror movie, you better have an interesting thing to say, like a Cronenberg or a Carpenter would, about the sci-fi part of the horror, right?
Yeah.
So they were focused on their firewall defense, which was a bunch of protocols that involved mechanics. We punch this button, we close this door, we make this thing beep, we get this laser. And the key to the firewall was actually flesh. It was not tech. It was don't feed Calvin.
Yeah, just keep
and
shit
they kept
away from him.
failing to not feed Calvin, which I thought was like a really interesting, like, you know, life, organic matter versus, you know, cold, you know, what a matter statement for why it was sci-fi horror in the first place. At least they had something to say. You know? So that's you know, the first spoiler.
Yeah, the first.
Let's dive into the biggest spoilers by let's segue into talking about like creature design first.
It moved fucking weird. Like when it moved, like I was like, there's like when there's a spider in the room that like I need to get rid of. I'm like, I even have to like give myself like a little bit of prep. Like, all right, let's do this. If Calvin was in the room. Nope. I'd be like, this is your room now. You moved in.
It's a smart move.
I'd give you some food, but you grow, but just enjoy your time here.
Right.
The fucking way he moved. Well, this is the other thing. There's also multiple stages of him. So the more he feeds, the bigger he grows, which leads me to my next monster.
I'm not following it all because right now I'm picturing Calvin Airbnb. Right? So I just stay here. You'll have a good time.
You don't worry about it. You just live here.
Go ahead.
But the creature design, it morphs. So he starts out little like, you know, kind of microbial looking. He's not that small, but he's small enough.
Well, and you know, one of the characters says something when he's small and he's in the petri dish, and he's reacting to like stimulus, and they're like, "It's beautiful." And you know, that's a corny kind of line that you would put in a trailer that would. It actually was pretty beautiful. Like when it was really small and just like that white filaments and like whatever. It was like National Geographic when they're like, we discovered a kind of jellyfish no one's ever seen before, and they show it to you. You're like, wow. It's like,
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly.
They made it. It didn't seem as, which is also hard to do. It's like they made a cheese ball thing that you've seen in film over and over again. Like they made it work. You know, it wasn't like a groundbreaking thing, but it was just like, oh, thank God they weren't corny with this.
Exactly.
They did it well.
It wasn't a mogwai.
And then the way he evolved too, which just triggered a memory. I wish the game Evolve would have been good. But his design when he got bigger and bigger and bigger, it got better, and he's sort of like to me he had the predator mouth, right? Like the 4 sections of the mouth that grew over. Even when he sort of became like a predator bat looking type of guy.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
And it was fucking
a
cool.
Translucent predator bat.
And it was fucking cool. Like we were talking about that. Like whenever you see like people do like collages of like horror villains, you know, they have like the big names, Pennywise, and all these other fucking people. And I'm wondering like, well, how do you put Calvin in there? What stage do you put Calvin? Do you put him like real small in the middle from the beginning, or is it at the end when he's like the bat fucking thing? Or
I think it's in the middle. I think he was most impressive to me in the middle when he was in the capsule. Big spoiler, you know, at the end. Then it was, but let's back up for a second, because first of all, I'm just gonna say it now. Horror fans who have not seen this movie, people are not talking about this movie, whatever. There's a great new villain in horror. He's arrived, and Calvin is a great monster, right? I was totally enthused by how well they pulled off his design, what he does, how he moves. But let's talk about what they said about him, because what he actually is, right? The scientist says he's all muscle, all eye, all something
and
else.
Nerve,
all nerve.
Yeah.
So every part of Calvin can see, fight, and feel.
Yeah.
Right? Was that right?
I think so.
Which was creepy because that means he's seeing totally like 360 or more, like,
yeah,
right, like whatever. And one of the things that really struck me about Calvin that I give them all kinds of credit for, that I didn't realize until the movie was almost over, he doesn't make a sound. He's completely silent, no sounds. Even the predator like clicks, right?
Well, and he made that slappy noise.
He doesn't make any sound.
When he moves.
When he moves, if he reacts with matter, but he makes no sound. He doesn't emit things. He doesn't growl. He doesn't like whatever.
I think he made some kind of noise.
I don't think he makes any sound
at the very end when he looked at Jake Gyllenhaal.
I gotta rewatch it. I don't think he made any sound.
I think he made like some kind of. He didn't make like a predator click.
But when he was hunting, he was totally silent. And the thing is, given the nature of our politics and what we live through in culture, now with everyone like talking at volume 15 fucking all the time.
Yeah.
Having a silent horror creature was like, I was like, this is great news. For
you know it's a good villain when for what, like 40 years, something like that, like Alien has been like the perfect killing machine. When I left the theater, I was thinking like, so
who would win?
I'm pretty sure Calvin would win.
Yeah.
I'm like 100% sure because like nothing they did to it affected. Like they put a fucking flamethrower to it.
Right.
They did a bunch of other shit. Nothing fucking affected him. He, like they said in the trailer, like they took out Mars or something like that. So now they sort of just like forced the way to the front. Like, all right, a challenger's arrived. Grab the xenomorphs. It's time to go attack. Which I would fucking like. They said like because in the movie they said like these things more than one took out something. So now I'm like. If there was a bunch of those eggs and all that shit, like what would happen if a face hugger got on Calvin?
Yeah, totally.
So but
the fact that you can even think that and not know the answer the other way means that they're
which makes it terrifying because aliens held that fucking throne and Predators tried. I've always been more. I always thought the alien was fucking cooler than the Predator. Sorry. But this one made me go, well, Calvin could do it.
Yeah.
And I'm rooting for the rookie now. Like, I think Calvin could fucking do it. Like, basically, that's what we're saying about this film. Like, it brought out it brought out the nerdy fucking conversations that, like, real fucking horror fans talk about for, like, way too long. and they do podcasts about it.
Well, that was another thing I wanted to give them credit for. You and I discussed this walking out of the movie was... I was 100% sure that there was going to be at least two scenes, once I realized what was happening and what it was, where there's going to be two scenes where Calvin got subdivided and different pieces of him like crawled back to the original piece or developed into other pieces or killed people in other rooms because, like whatever, like Liquid Terminator or The Thing or any name, the Blob, all of them, right? Calvin was completely one piece, not divided, and just him the whole time wreaking all the havoc. Like he never had to split up and do.
They gave the crew a chance. Like it wasn't just like a complete. Like I mean, it was a slaughter. Like from their point of view, but like they set it up to where like on paper you just have to keep them in one room.
Yeah, because there's no stakes if something can just break into pieces and show up in different places.
Which is always a fucking cheeseball. Then like, oh my god, there's 20 of them. We're fucked. Like this one was like, there's one of them. We can track him, and it just kind of grounded the movie a little bit more.
Yeah,
and because like what you mentioned when they multiply, that's always a cheeseball fucking thing to do. Like it worked once. I think Terminator was like, oh god, like something happened or whatever the fuck. Like it works once. That's all you get, Hollywood.
Well, think about it though. That's the thing is. It took a Terminator to kill a Terminator once they raised the stakes to that point. Right?
Yeah.
Humans aren't going to have a chance, right? So when you do like, I love The Thing. It's one of the best horror movies ever made, but I always watch it and just feel like no one has a chance in this movie. They shouldn't have a chance by definition of what it is, right? I felt like they at least gave them a chance here and they just, by a series of bad decisions, made sure that they had no chance. Right? Yeah. And the question is, how smart is Calvin? Because that isn't solved.
Great. That's the good thing I wanted to talk about was like we talked about the design, we talked about the kills, but like they actually like justify what Calvin's doing like while they're like about to be slaughtered. The scientist guy who was fucking great, the paralyzed guy, and it's kind of cool they had a paralyzed guy in space because I don't think I've ever. Like,
no, and it made so much sense because the weightlessness, you didn't realize when you first introduced to him that he even had a wheelchair.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. So I thought that was pretty cool. But they say like he's just doing because the whole thing was life. Like life's just gonna do what it needs to do to continue going. So they didn't make him like you see the xenomorph. It's like perfect killing machine. Like they got to do something for the mother. Like it's gonna fuck you up. But which I guess is sort of the same thing that Calvin's doing, but like it didn't seem as villainous for Calvin.
No, it didn't.
It was just like he's just doing what he needs to do. Like he doesn't hate us. They
have that conversation.
They had that conversation, and that was the only part that I thought was a little cheesy. Which he goes, "I just hate him. I purely fucking hate." I was like, "No, that line kind of sucks," but I get it.
I didn't like the way some of the lines were put into the movie or how they were delivered, and that was one of them. But the concept had to be there because I was actually thinking this when Calvin. So this is arguable. I would love to hear what other people think. Lay it on our Facebook page or do whatever, comment, because I'm really curious on how they take this. I thought Calvin was also angry too. I think he felt hate too. The movie didn't really do a good job of projecting that, but his face that he was giving Jake Gyllenhaal at the end was not like, happy birthday.
It wasn't like, I'm just living.
Right. But I wonder if it was just equal on both sides, where people misunderstand. They're trying to survive and save their friends. Mm-hmm. And they hate Calvin, even though he's just trying to survive. But flip it. Calvin's just trying to survive, right? But they're like electrocuting him and choking off his oxygen, mm-hmm. right? So you could see him being like, I fucking hate these people who are like trying
Did they say he had a brain? Because like
he's all brain.
He's all brain. So he's all nerve. Oh, that's right. He's all nerve. Because part of me was
the question is, how smart is he and what does he feel? And I think most people who watch the movie probably would assume that he's neutral. He's dispassionate. He's just trying to survive. That's the point. Life, right? Mm-hmm. And that she put in that line about hate. And I was wondering why that line is there. Mm-hmm. But it makes me wonder if Calvin had a Calvin buddy. That he right before he was going in. No, there's just a Calvin buddy that was hadn't grown yet because he hadn't eaten. And Calvin was heading to go kill the last couple characters. He could turn to the Calvin buddy and be like, I gotta go kill these fucking people. I hate these people. They shock me. They take away my food. They blow the air out of this. I hate these. I feel like they were both doing it, which is why that line was there. But I could be wrong. I don't know.
No, I think you're right, because then that's the only reason that would even have to fucking be
there.
No,
the other reason is that they got emotional, which is why they lost. And Calvin didn't.
Yeah, but the whole thing's about life, and a lot of life is emotions and shit like that. Yeah. So I think that makes the most sense of the two. The other thing that I liked, the paralyzed guy, I liked how they used the fact that he couldn't feel his legs for Calvin's sake.
Yes.
And
that Calvin was smart enough to figure that out.
And that Calvin that's the thing. So I do, now that we talked about it, I do think he probably hated Jake Gyllenhaal by the end. He's probably like, you fucking suck. I got to go back to work. We took over Mars and we were like, great.
Yeah,
we
could just throws on his hat. He's like, I got to go.
I got to take over another fucking planet. But it was something that I thought about when the paralyzed guy was on the floor. I was waiting because they had the defibrillators out. Fucking alien. You thought it too.
Fucking thing too.
The thing.
Right?
That's right. The thing. I was like, oh my God, they're going to do it.
I know. I was like, they're going to do it. He's going to shock him in the chest. It's not his chest is going to open, but it's going to shoot out of his head or a mouth or something.
Yeah. It was
jump scare.
It was either going to be an alien or the thing. They were going to defib his chest. Chest happens. Alien shit fucks up.
That shit was on purpose.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying there are so many fucking horror references in this fucking movie. It's great.
Because they just defibrillate him and bring him back to life.
Yeah, and he comes back, and you're like, that's not what's supposed to happen. We're in a horror film. Someone's supposed to blow up.
But then they find out that Calvin's hiding in his suit on his leg, feeding off of him later, which is, creepy, not jump scare, creepy.
Which makes it really fucking scary because this alien is on the ship trying to kill everyone, and you're sitting there trying to bring your friend back to life while the fucker is right next, he's there.
He's there.
He's right
and
next to you.
probably listening to you. He's all brain, right? So he's listening to you make your plans.
Yeah, so
do your thing.
He's just sucking on some blood. You're going to try to what? No, they're not. No, they're not. That's not going to fucking work. Anyways, I'm going to suck this guy dry.
That's not going to work. All right, I want to do two things. One is I want to talk about weaknesses or things that weren't so great about the movie, and then let's do the ending, right?
Okay, so one thing that I liked, which was the last thing I wanted to bring up.
Oh, yeah. Was
the last death that was memorable. Mm-hmm. They fucking made a woman drown in outer space. Oh, yeah,
we got to say that because that was an amazing scene.
That's something there's no water in space. How do you make someone drown in space?
That was so creative.
They fucking did it.
They did it. And it lasted for 2 days. The scene went on forever, and it was so uncomfortable.
Yeah, the movie made me feel uncomfortable a lot of times mostly because people were choking.
Well, I'll take the things you don't like about the movie because it's completely connected to what you just said. Because you and I talked about this. I did not like the sequence. So Calvin escapes from the lab and then vanishes. They don't know where he went.
Yeah.
And then the ship starts to malfunction. It's because the coolant is running out, and it's because Calvin's eating the coolant to grow, right? So they've lost connection transmissions to Earth, which is a little convenient. And then one of the astronauts has to go out, and she goes out and tries to fix the transmitter so they can talk to Mission Control, let them know that they done fucked up. So she's out on the ship, and she opens this valve where the coolant is, and it's bone dry. She's like, there's no coolant. And they figure out Calvin's eating it, and then Calvin shoots out of the valve,
like one of those things at the bank,
and attacks her. Right, and he breaks the coolant thing, so it starts leaking inside her suit, which is why she starts drowning in coolant water in her suit, and which is again so gross. But she's way far away from the entry hatch where or exit, whatever, where she came out of the ship originally. She's like halfway across the ship at this point. And what she decides to do with Calvin wrapped around her is she decides to try to make it back to inside the ship, carrying Calvin the whole time. Jake Gyllenhaal's waiting for her at the entryway, and he's ready to fight Calvin, get Calvin off her, save her life, do whatever. But the only way this is going to work is they're going to open the door, and she's going to come back in the ship wearing Calvin.
Yeah.
Right? Which the firewall lady would be like, bad idea.
Don't do that. Get her out of here.
But they're totally going to do it. And this woman, while she's drowning, she fights her way all the way across the exterior of the ship, jumps like through space, like lands, almost flies off into space, crawls her way all the way to the door to look Jake and Gyllenhaal in the face. And Jake Gyllenhaal tries to open the door, and she doesn't let him open the door. She holds the door handle, and he can't open it. And she drowns right in front of him. And then in space, and then this is really creeping you out. You keep emphasizing the in space part. And then the firewall commander, Jake's like, let me open the door, stop fighting me. And the commander's like, she's doing it on purpose. Doing it on purpose? You just spent 5 minutes fighting from where you were all the way to this door. If you wanted to sacrifice yourself to save the crew and not let Calvin in, here's what you do. Jump out into space. Don't jump towards the door, stare Jake Gyllenhaal in the face, and then be like, I'm not going in. So it felt weird to me. I could feel like maybe her decision-making was breaking down because she was drowning. And I think they even dialogued that in to kind of make that make sense because they needed the moment. Maybe they even knew that was weird.
That is probably
But she was aware enough to know which direction to hold the doorknob to fight him. So she was still consciously making decisions. She was strong enough. Not that arm wrestling Jake Gyllenhaal is that hard. Actually, that's funny because that's going to come up again.
I don't know. He was in that boxing movie. He got pretty shredded.
Well, apparently it's not that hard because of what happened, the way the movie ends. But, but Calvin's also super strong, so maybe not fair to Jake. Sorry, Jake.
We take it back. We really think you're strong.
It back. You would definitely.
Jake Gyllenhaal, you're really strong. We're sorry.
You'd beat me arm wrestling. But anyway, it just felt really weird that she would fight so hard to traverse all the way back to the door to not get into the ship.
I was waiting for her to jump into like deep space
and have Calvin figure out a way back. Right.
Yeah, but then it ends up happening that way. Like her body just happens to float, and then he like pushes off. He's like, "Fuck this," and then it's like thunk, back to the thing. That is probably the most weak sauce point of the whole movie. But that's kind of like the only weak sauce point of the film.
It wasn't even that bad. It only hit me after, like in the moment. It was because the scene was so tense. It didn't even take me out of the movie. It didn't bother me. I just thought of it afterwards. Like that felt like one of those moments where they wanted a dramatic scene of two people looking through a window at each other.
Yeah.
And the way they wrote it, and they were like, we're forget logic. We need this moment.
We just need that
this moment,
like that level of defeat.
And bad horror movies, that they're like 88 minutes of that.
Yeah,
and this is like 20 seconds.
Yeah, you're fine. You get it. You're like, okay, yeah, I remember we're a horror film, and then we move on. Yeah, worst part of the film, not even that bad.
Not bad at all.
So the fucking ending, though, I don't even think I expressed this to you. So the ending, the way they set it up, you automatically know what is probably going to happen. There's two people.
As a Tales from the Crypt fan, I think you 100% know what's gonna happen.
I knew exactly what was going to happen. I didn't, and just like Tales from the Crypt, I told myself that's not how it's going to happen, and I knew it was going to happen. So the way they set up, there's two escape pods, 2 humans, and 1 alien. What's gonna happen? Someone's gonna try to. So Jake Gyllenhaal talks about how he hates the fuckers on Earth. He doesn't like that there's always war.
Yeah, they said earlier in the movie he had set the record for most consecutive days in space. Yeah. He doesn't want to go back. He's even paying a health price for it. Like they said, his muscles are starting to atrophy or whatever. But yeah, he's like a misanthrope. He doesn't like human beings. He doesn't want to go back to Earth.
Yeah. So he says,
natural guy to sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly. And I even thought like the guy who doesn't want to go back to Earth is probably going to end up on Earth. So they set it up. I'll take Calvin with me. We'll go into deep space. He'll kill me. It's fine.
Well, this is actually so the cool part is they make the decision post corny Goodnight Moon reading segue.
Yeah. Correction.
2 week sauce. 2 week sauce moments. That was pretty bad. It was way good in the trailer.
But both weak sauce parts of the film are like in total.
They're a blink of
like
an
a
eye.
minute.
Yeah, totally.
Like it's fine.
Totally. But so they decide what they're going to do is they have, and I love, and I almost forgot to say this, and I want this in here because to do justice to this movie, there are so many little creepy. Everyone calls these kind of movies like haunted house in space.
Yeah.
Movies, right? There's so many creepy ways they use the environment to give you little touches that I thought were magnificent. Mm-hmm. Remember the glove in the first lab where you put your hands in the two gloves and you reach in? Like when they flash back to the lab after all the damage has been done and everyone's out of it, that glove is just like floating out there.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
white hand, like creepy, like almost alive, moving. Mm-hmm. There were just these little touches like that all through the movie that they did such a good job of making. Like even the window they would stand in looking out into space was just creepy because it looked like nothing's protecting you from like the coldness of everything.
Yeah, you're just out
exposed,
there.
Right?
Yeah.
So the movie did a really good job of that. But one of the things I liked was their plan was Calvin needs oxygen. They had oxygen sticks on them. Mm-hmm. So they were going to use the oxygen sticks to lure Calvin into one of the pods. Mm-hmm. So Calvin would go into the pod with Jake Gyllenhaal. He would close the door, trap it in there, and shoot off into space so Calvin could not get back to Earth.
Yeah.
Rebecca Ferguson was going to get in the other pod and go to Earth and tell people never go pick never garden on Mars.
Yeah.
Right. But what was cool was the oxygen sticks, when they activated them, they kind of lit up like sparklers, right? Like fireworks. Yeah. And then you see little wisps of oxygen coming off. But
I loved that little touch.
I know. But what I loved was it because it made Calvin sort of sympathetic to me, how greedy he was for these sticks. Because when he would get close, they'd throw him one. And he would wrap his bat wings around it, and he would just hug it out with the stick. He'd be like, ooh, and he would literally just like an addict. He'd be like but it's because he's starving of oxygen, and he wouldn't even go try to kill anyone while he was holding the stick. Like I feel like if you had an infinite number of these sticks, you'd have no problem with Calvin.
Yeah,
you would just like feed him sticks.
You just keep going
because he loved those sticks. Like he was like, and he was so desperate to either not die or he really but the image of him because he was big at that point, and they'd throw a stick and he would wrap around. And he got really small, and he would just hold the stick.
Yeah,
and not
just
move.
becomes this little
and it was
glowy bat.
Such a great touch because I was like, oh, Calvin's starving.
Yeah,
but anyway,
I didn't feel that. I was like, fuck, get out of there. That's a goddamn monster that's gonna destroy you.
Anyway,
when you see what it does to Ryan Reynolds, you're not like, oh. Poor Calvin.
I was maybe a measure of how I feel about Ryan Reynolds, but go ahead.
Deadpool's so great. Anyways, so Jake Gyllenhaal, I'll take Calvin. We'll go on a space adventure to nowhere. Girl says I'll go to Earth, and you automatically fucking know because like the both pods look the same, and you even see them sort of like flying close to each other, and the camera cuts back and forth between the two, and they confuse the shit out of you purposefully.
Totally.
And it confused me too because there's just no way to track like both those great pods, like which one's great pod one, great pod two. Like you've no fucking clue.
Can I be honest with you? I didn't know. I honestly thought that they were doing that to give you fake tension, and that's not how that was going to turn out. I knew when the two Japanese fishermen, Godzilla style, started heading towards the capsule floating in the water, and I was like, this doesn't feel right at all.
Yeah.
But they had me through the whole descent,
Yeah, they did So like in the back of my head, I knew it was gonna end that way, but in the moment, I didn't want it to.
I didn't
so
think
like
they'd be brave enough to
I
do it.
bought. So like I believed that she was going to Earth. But the thing that I didn't say that gave me chills about the film was like her screaming at the end.
That was so good.
The way she was screaming, like it fucked me up. Like she was
all
legit
out.
terrified. Like she's like, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna starve in space.
And they did the thing callback to the beginning of the movie, which I love when a movie will go circle. There's another callback too I want to drop in here, but like remember we were talking about in the first scene where you were totally disoriented. You were upside down or sideways, and you're like whatever. They were cutting to her screaming, and that ship was like twirling like a fucking champagne cork coming out of a bottle. Like it was like you had no idea where you were. The instrument panel was flashing like failure, failure. She was screaming, and that thing was tumbling through space, and you were just like, that is the worst way to go ever.
Yeah, she's gonna be in there for like
days.
for days, just spinning, and like I don't know. I would fuck like that.
And the music they were playing during that part, right? Like
I don't even remember the music. I was just like
it was
terrified.
this booming like if the devil scored Inception.
That's a good way to put it.
Music.
That's a good way to put it.
Heart pounding.
And then it ending with like Calvin like looked like he blew up in the space like when they opened
he's
up.
been feeding off Jake Gyllenhaal the whole time.
Yeah, he just looks like
but he didn't kill him.
Yeah, like Jake was still screaming.
He was doing what he did to the guy in the wheelchair. He was feeding off him, but he wasn't killing him. Because probably he's smart enough to be like, I don't know how long this trip is. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't just kill the guy, eat him, and then be like, oh, I'm in here for 14 more days.
Well, I loved how they said he needs.
He rationed himself. Now that I think about it.
Well,
he rationed Jake Gyllenhaal like a beef jerky.
Well, the trip was only.
He didn't know.
The trip.
Why would he not kill him? He killed everybody.
Well, he probably
kept him alive on purpose. I'm telling you.
For like as long as he needed to.
Yeah,
like it wasn't like.
Of course.
I mean, he was gonna chew him to the bone at some point.
Eventually, right?
But my favorite part was when they mentioned, because they also mentioned that Calvin needed water to survive, and I just love how like the shot was just like the little pod, basically being like he's going to destroy everything. Like they just end the fucking world,
right?
Like I don't know. It just
the cool thing is they didn't overdo it, which is again, I mean, I love this movie because what I expected was. The fishermen or whatever they are, they float up to the capsule. They look through the window. Jake Gyllenhaal's in there. He's Calvinized, right? But he's still alive. And they're trying to open the door, and he's literally like, "No, don't open the door." And they open the door, and the camera zooms up, overhead shot. And what I expected was all these tentacles to shoot out and like fishermen to fly everywhere and whatever. And you don't see any of that. You literally just see the capsule bobbing in the water, and then the angle comes out wider and wider, and there's more water, more things for Calvin to eat. But you're not seeing death and destruction yet. And then two other boats kind of float into frame and head towards the capsule. Because, I mean...
Yeah, everyone's like...
Let's just feed Calvin.
Yeah, well, they're like, the thing just came from fucking
Yeah,
space.
they don't know what's happening, right? But I expected, like, big violent jump scare or whatever, and they did the opposite of that, which is...
I'm just so glad they went with the ending they did of like I don't know, it was like pure like fucked, like we're so fucked, full fucking terror, like there's it's not a good ending. And now that we talk about the ending, like this to me feels like a 1950s space movie done right. Like if you went back to the 50s and like you saw what they were doing, you're like, check out this movie live, try to replicate that. The movies back then would have been way fucking better. Like this feels like a B movie in the 50s done today, but right.
Could totally see it.
Like
totally
that's how I would express this movie.
Totally see it.
It's like I don't know, fucking not Forbidden Zone, fucking Forbidden Planet. Like it's I don't know. It just
or whatever. Like
and like it reminds me of the Misfits song "Don't Open Until Doomsday." It just reminds me of all. It just feels like a B movie done right. It's a B movie that stayed after school to get the A. Like that's life.
Except for the characters were a little bland. I agree, and I know it was amazing. And the last full circle thing is the opening shot of the movie is just this one light traveling through a starry sky where your eye is tracking it because it's the only thing moving, but it looks like every other 10,000 things in the shot, right? And the last shot is just this overhead shot of like this little thing bobbing in the water, like it's all insignificant. Like life is just like this shit could be happening in all kinds of different other planets at the same time. There could be Calvins everywhere. Like, because what does it matter what happens in one spot? Like, Earth thinks it's so important, right? But whatever.
On
like
a large scale, I mean, a goddamn
right, exactly.
thing.
And it was bleak, and for a studio movie to like not pull that punch, I thought was just so refreshing. Right?
Yeah, this is definitely. I'm gonna call it now. This is gonna be on everyone's list of like, you didn't see Life last year, see it now. Like when it's way too late for it to like show the studios.
See it in the theater.
Yeah, see it in the fucking theater if you can. That way, fucking people like Sony know to put more fucking money into that
Behind real things and that. Yeah.
Yeah, like to good shit.
All right, so let's close out with our original question.
After talking about this,
the second best space horror movie of all time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we went through some genres in our head, like what's the second best? What other genres?
You looked up like horror western, which is like not.
Well, that was there was not even a real thing. I mean, it is, but it's not. But we were like, what's the second best? Non-franchise slasher, or what's the second best whatever. Like when you take genres like psychological thriller or whatever, and you take like the big name out of it, like with sci-fi horror would be Alien.
Yeah.
Right? I thought something would jump immediately to our heads, but even when you Google it, like if nothing comes to you, because nothing came to us.
No.
Right? I mean, the only thing I thought of was Event Horizon, but I was like, I'm not happy with it.
And that's that I feel like that would be the closest answer, because like. Just because it is.
Right. But it's surprising, being originally from Cleveland. Like I'm intimately familiar with the feeling of following sports teams that only have one good player, and then if he breaks his arm, everyone else on the team sucks,
fucked, yeah.
and you're screwed, right? So like, I feel like space horror, not sci-fi, space horror as a genre, it's got LeBron, which is Alien.
Yeah.
And then it's got, I don't even know what the sports example of not, whatever it would be, but Zav Mozgov or whatever. But it's got like, the bench is pretty weak, right?
Yeah.
So Event Horizon was whatever. And then we couldn't think of any other really good examples. So this is a pretty shallow field.
We had to pull Jason X out.
Yeah.
We had to dust
Jason
him
X
off.
is like 5th in the Google results.
Yeah. It was like... Yeah, I think it was 4th or 5th.
Go ahead and look it up if you don't believe us. But so, I feel like this is a strong contender for second best space horror movie of all time.
Yeah, I think, and I think it's rightfully
it's taking all Alien movies out, right?
Yeah, but even if you put like the other aliens in there,
Alien Resurrection.
It's still pretty close. You put like Alien versus Predator in there, like life is still like, please, I'm the second string now to Aliens, so please. Rest the rest of the season.
Right. But we love other opinions. So if we're missing stuff, or there's other things that you think are, automatically knock anything, other options out of the box as second best space horror, hit us with them. We'd love to do it.
And if you haven't seen Life, see it so you know what we're talking about. Like fucking
sure.
A well done space horror film that we think will be second to Alien.
Yep.
How often do you hear that?
Not often.
Not often. So let us know what you think.
Now I want the director of this to make a horror western.
That'd be cool.
He can easily, I mean, Bone Tomahawk's he's got no other, go for it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. that's another episode. And we're gonna have to go real. We're gonna have to scrape the bottom of the barrel if we want to do Western horror.
Yep.
Jesus. All right. Well, let us know what you think, and until next time, see Life, and let us know if we missed a sci-fi or space horror
Not
film.
Sci-fi.
Space
we
horror.
know what those are.
Space horror film. All right. See you next week, guys.
Bye.